Hello,
Hello. Hola.
how are you?
Pretty good, pretty good. Déjame echarte un poco más para
Thanks
atrás.
for joining us. So everyone, thank you for joining today's conversation with José Castrellón. José Castrellón, I'm really happy to be in conversation with you.
Gracias, gracias.
How are you? Where are you?
Pretty good. I'm in my house because I don't have a studio. I wish I had a studio. See?
Um, yeah, so we're gonna talk a little bit about your work. I'm gonna ask Alessandra to put the slides.
Nice.
Yeah. So can you start talking a little bit more about this work,
About this guy. Well,
guy, or
this,
this image that
as a starting image, this is an amazing image because that's basically where it's like the main inspiration of like my latest work for the past 5, 6 years. Is this man saying was speak softly and carry a big stick, and then we got independence in 1903 because the French had failed building the canal, and then through him, he posed two big ships in the Caribbean side and the Pacific side, and then Colombia surrendered to the US, and it took over Panama, and they did an enclave called the Canal Zone. So basically a colony inside of Panama, since 1903, and we got dollarized since 1903. So it goes all around what the ideas and the story and how he made himself to do this, too. And then from being a Panamanian artist, it's basically my statement, what I talk about and get inspired of doing because of all this trickery and Machiavellic plans that this man did.
yeah, and the plans that he had for other countries as well.
First U.S. intervention outside in Latin America in worldwide, it was in 1898 in Cuba for the Battle of San Juan Hill in Santiago de Cuba, and then that's how after that war got annexed Puerto Rico too as well.
Yeah. And can we see the next slide, which is another image? Where do you find these images? Are these
I scoped them around in the internet,
Yeah.
and
Like of your work, that you find these images and you start as a point of departure, and then you kind of start this really long research project.
the thing is, like, how I started with this, man. It's like, what is crazy about, like, in Panama, like when you're studying history and all this stuff, they don't teach this. They don't even teach when Panama got invaded in 1989 by George Bush. And I think they're starting to talk about this. But I had this one professor at school that he was pretty socialist and got us talking to us about all this stuff. So basically, I got lucky to know about this stuff like in a young age. So I started questioning myself. And when I turned into an artist or whatever you want to call it, like I started like kind of researching even more and reading more about this whole situation of the U.S. and Latin America, and also too, well, when I come from Panama, and that's my point of departure, and then reading books here and there, and then reading articles and googling a lot of stuff. That's part of my process.
Yeah, and you kind of become obsessed with these histories as well, or these
Yeah,
stories.
I'm pretty obsessed.
Yeah. Can we see the next slide, please? And this is kind of the point of departure for this project, Palo en Cebao, right? And
Yeah,
can you
Palo.
more about what is this? What is the meaning of this phrase? Or yeah.
Well, the thing is, like, if you can put the image, like the first image that I saw ever, well, I was born in 1980. Actually, the live cover
Yeah, this is the
So
second.
everybody can see it?
Yeah, the next
Yeah.
one. Yeah.
No, the actual cover of
Yeah.
the.
Is the next one. This
There
one.
you go. So that one that happened like in 1964. You know, the students of the institute. It was actually the borderline between the Canal Zone and Panama City. You know, it was an enclave. You couldn't go inside.
And what happened?
That day, well, this movement, del Instituto Nacional, they wanted to be. There was a movement, a socialist movement, like of the sovereignty, la soberanía de Panama, and then they started like parading that day, you know, and they tried to cross the fence because where they at right now, hoisting that flag, in that picture, that this U.S. reporter took in '64, is actually the line, and then there were riots. Well, U.S. people call it the riots. In Panama, it's Los Mártires del 9 de Enero after that happened because like 15 students died that day. But how my point of departure, how this happened, is like this professor took to class because this is a national holiday in Panama. They made a national holiday, and then because of the martyrs, and he took the cover of this magazine to class, to history class, and it struck me, you know. And then talking all about this, and further on in my life researching, I took it as a point of departure of working on a project. I always wanted to do a project about this, and then didn't know how to attach it with it or juxtapose it to something else. And I bought the magazine cover. I found it in Google, like for $25. It went worldwide. This was a case. It went to the international court in The Hague in Holland, and because of the murder of the students by the U.S. military. Actually, they shot from that hill, like from the Hotel Tivoli, that it was the only hotel in the Canal Zone. And after that incident, they finally hoist a flag inside the Canal Zone, you know? Because before, there was just U.S. territory. There was no Panamanian flag whatsoever. And that's what the young students were trying to say and trying to do. That's why they were trying to cross the fence, and they got shot. And the riot started. And then, well, in 70, and then in 68, there was a coup d'état by Omar Torrijos, and that it was kind of like a military coup d'état, kind of like socialist, but it was not kind of socialist. But then further on there, Omar Torrijos Herrera tried to do the treaties to get Panama back to Panama. And Jimmy Carter in September 7th of 1977 signed the treaty. So in 2000, the year 2000, it reverted. But so it kind of worked because it was the first protest, and a bunch of young kids died. So they made a huge statement and make things happen, you know. And then afterwards, me going to the countryside, you know, my family come from the countryside, and then November 3rd of 1903 is actually like the 4th of July in Panama. And then it's a traditional colonial game played in all Latin America, that is palo encebado.
Can we go back
to
the slides, which is this picture?
What is this picture? And it's all around. What I like about this idea, it's like, it's the inverse of what the students were doing, you know, and then kind of like a symbolic way of victory too, you know. It's hoisting a flag or putting down a flag, you know. And then this traditional game, it's celebrated November 3rd, el Día de la Independencia. And it was because of Teddy Roosevelt in the US, you know. And then they have two ways of doing it, you know. They put a stick, a big stick, you know, like how Teddy Roosevelt used to say, they used to carry a big stick, and then they pull it full of grease, and then put a flag, a Panamanian flag at the top. And then the game is the one who gets the flag down, you know, that day, that is the opposite, gets a prize, you know, and gets money. Gets money, gets food, gets alcohol, whatever.
Is that money attached to the actual stick?
What's that?
Is that actual money? The flags that you see, is that actual money?
There's two ways of doing it. The flag is a symbol as money, as a price. You know, either alcohol, most cases, money. You know, they will say that when the people is all gathered around, it's $100, it's $50, whatever. It depends on the sponsor of the show, of the game. And then the other one, like for kids, they do a shorter stick, un palo más chico, and then they do this kind of cross, and then they weave the dollars, and then hoist them up, and you try to grab them, you know, and you have like Grant and you have Lincoln on them, you know, and trying to grab them, you know. And then since that day, like 1903, we got dollarized that day too, you know.
Wow.
And
So
then it's kind of like yeah, it's super crazy. It's all the way around, you know. And then I found this, and then when with all this document that I found, I scanned the photographs, I appropriate them, and then reprint them, and then I shot these two photos in big format. And what else did I did? I did a video.
Can we see the next slide?
Yeah.
The next one.
Well, this part too, we can talk about this too.
Yeah, let's go back. Okay.
And then this is a sign. This is a sign made by this man, like in the countryside, for especially when they do fiestas, you know, they do this huge billboards, you know, to announce the party and who's gonna sponsor the party, or what artist gonna be playing there, typical, you know, whatever, and or cockfights that same day. It happens the same day. People go crazy, you know. And then I commissioned this guy, like este rotulista, they do it all by hand, you know.
Yeah.
So I like it's the text. I put two texts. That is this one that I took Panama. TR said, and there where the trouble began. And it's true. It's where all the trouble began. And he said that I took Panama in his address when the U.S. caught its independence, like from Colombia. And the other one is like the front text of the Life Cover magazine that says like students hoist up a flag above a flaming car, you know, riots, you know, and they were not riots, they were happening riots, but they were like trying to, you know, expresarse, you know, express themselves, you know, and they didn't want it to be like a part of a U.S. colony, you know, inside the Canal Zone. Yeah. And then the video.
Yeah, next slide. Yeah.
The video is like pure, like kind of like homage to all these kids that they died in this protest, in this protest. And what I did is like it's a moving image, single shot, one channel of the moving flag with the wind, and then a hand with the stars on, and then a hand comes and so it's a loop. So the flag kind of gets like hoisted up and put down, you know, and then when it gets down and it gets put on back again, it has no stars, you know. I intervened the flag with no flags, like meaning an homage of this absence of all the students that they died in because for the country, or the sovereignty of the country, you know, and fighting for the country and trying to be free and being sovereign, you know.
Yeah, and actually this work really hits like very personally home because the name is, well, the title of the work is The Right to Fly the Flag.
Yeah, The Right to Fly the Flag is the title
Yeah.
of that
And
video.
for many years in Puerto Rico, where I'm from, you couldn't fly the flag. Like it was illegal. So this work is very, for me, it's like very, very important. Also, and the poetic gesture also of kind of intervening the flag as a performative act of resistance also is very,
Resistance. And
yeah.
then, yeah, it was illegal in Panama too. That's why these kids wanted to hoist it up,
Yeah.
And a lot of stuff was illegal. Like we couldn't go in, but they were not paying taxes. The Sonians, the military, the Navy, and the Air Force working there. No taxes, no electrical bills, no tax on food. Actually, they were living inside the canal zone, inside of like a really well applied socialism inside the canal zone. Some people say that it was like a test of socialism. I don't know, but yes, they didn't have to pay housing.
Yeah.
No, they had healthcare. They had everything. They were super privileged.
Yeah. And this also is a company that that installation.
What's
First
that?
of all, where did you show this work first?
I showed this work first. I worked on it like for 2 years, and I showed it in Diablo Rosso Gallery in Panama. That I have worked with them like since like '07, since it opened, and that was the first time ever I showed it. Like kind of like in a white cube. And I also showed it in el Museo de Arte Moderno in Medellin for a group show. I showed it also in EVA International Biennial in Ireland.
Yeah.
And I had a solo show actually in Puerto Rico at Kilómetro 0.2 in Santurce.
That's the first time I saw this work, and I was so interested and intrigued by this story. Also, the way that you appropriate the narrative and the archival material, which I'm very much interested in. But how was your experience to see like those parallels in Puerto Rico and trying to
No, well, in Puerto Rico, I have a lot of link to Puerto Rico because, like I have kind of like political family out there, and I always have wanted to go, and I went, and I have met a lot of people, Carlo Andre and Gillo, and and Chemi came to Panama, and all the Puerto Rican artists, and they're all socialists, they want to be Puerto Rico to be free, and I think the same way too, and I think it's the same situation, like how Panama we lived it, and yes, actually the second place, Teddy Roosevelt went to Cuba, and Guantanamo is still there, all because of strategy, and it was annexed Puerto Rico in 1898, and then what? 5 years later, like the French died of well, Fernando Lesseps was a charlatan, era un charlatan, like he had done the Suez Canal, and the thing is like he had his presentation card like he already had done a canal connecting the Persian Gulf and the Mediterranean, not to go to Cape of Good Hope, like how Ever Given did it and got stuck, and they did it like the old school way before Fernando Lesseps showed up. But the Suez Canal doesn't have like locks. It's a straight canal, it's all desert. So it's kind of like the Corinthian Canal, you have to he only had to dig through desert, and he had like kind of the Nile too to like fill it up, but then he came to Panama, and then because of the continental plates, you know, like the Pacific has really receding tides, big tides, you know, and the Caribbean doesn't have that much big of tides, and it's higher. The Caribbean is higher than the Pacific, you know. So, and they had to go through rocks, you know, through mountains, and then, well, all the Frenchmen croaked there from malaria, and then I think the U.S. already, no, it's not that I think, it is. The U.S. already was there because they already had done the Dry Canal, what they call the Dry Canal, in 1855. That is the the Panama Railroad.
Yeah.
That connected the Caribbean side to Pacific side. So they were watching what the French were doing.
Yeah.
And probably they knew they were going to fail, you know, so.
Yeah. I want to
called...
Sorry.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
No, dime.
No, I said that I want to have enough time to discuss the other works.
Yeah. Go ahead.
These are some of the works that Jose was explaining, and they were shown at, as I said, as he said, Kilómetro 0.2, which is an art space in Puerto Rico, a very important independent art space that, to my opinion, is the link to other Latin American countries, because Gillo and Cassandra Ibarra always find ways to collaborate with other countries. So it's in my opinion, it's a very important place. So can we see the next slide? And this takes us to this project, Cuna Metal. Can you speak a little bit more about this project and how you...
Yeah, this project is, well, I talked to you about it, but like, well, we have everybody here, you know, it's really emotional to me, you know. Cuna Metal, it's resistance, you know, too, resistance too, you know, from indigenous youth. I grew up in the punk and heavy metal scene, like in Panama City in the 90s. And there was a group of indigenous kids that they will come to all the shows and they will slam dance, you know, and if you will bump into them inside the pit, and you were Waga, that Waga means like non-Kuna, non-indigenous, probably they will beat you up. So you always have to be aware about that. They were kind of like a gang. And I saw that for the first time ever when I went, well, my parents let me go out of the house, you know, when I was like 15, 95, going to shows. My friends started to play bands, you know, in bars. And I got obsessed with it. And I was like, dude, this is crazy. So I was taking pictures, you know, I was not into art. I hadn't studied stuff. I just was flunking subjects in school. But it stuck in my mind, you know. And then I went to school, learning a little bit more, kind of like got a little bit more intellectual, you know, like kind of like into reading. And then I started like, I want to photograph these people, but where are they, you know? And then I started working with la Agencia de Cooperación Española Internacional, that is an NGO in Panama, helping out the Cunayala, that is a comarca. It's an indigenous, I don't call it an indigenous reservation because it was not given to them, you know. It's not like here in the US. This group of indigenous people, Cuna or Guna, they had a revolution in 1924. And by colonial times, they will fight the Dutch, because it's in the Caribbean side of Panama. You know, it's an archipelago of 365 islands, on a strip line that connects from the middle of Panama all the way to Colombia. And there are Cunas too, also too in Colombia. And they always fought all these colonial white men, you know? And then 1924, we were already independent from Colombia. And then they fought too, you know, to get that piece of land. It's the only indigenous group in the whole Americas, you know, from Alaska to Tierra del Fuego, that they have fought for the land, you know, and stood up to white men. And then working in la Agencia de Cooperación Española, it got translated, a book from the Smithsonian Institute of this anthropologist called James Howe. How you pronounce it? It's Howe. Howe. And they were promoting that book inside the community, you know, and it has gotten translated to Spanish. And also too, we were doing a calendar, also too, and Kuna calendar. We were doing it with photos and that kind of stuff. So the language, the Kuna language, doesn't kind of like disappear. And then I saw the book. I bought the book and I started like reading that. And that was like when I was like in my early 20s. And the title of the book is called "The People Who Never Kneeled," El pueblo que jamás nunca se arrodilló. And then I went like, wow, man. And then like how everything this all started, and I went like, and then I went all the way to 1995. This kid in punk rock shows and heavy metal shows. I went like, this is the same stuff.
Yeah.
You know. So I started looking for them, and the first guy I met, it was this albino guy, Machus Peña. Rest in peace, buddy. I met him like he was a bagger in a packer in a supermarket in Panama City, and it was not even like in my neighborhood, you know, like I just bumped him and I just started going there, and then I didn't have like kind of like the guts to talk to him, you know, because I'm a white guy, you know. And then one time I had the courage and I'm like to talk to him, you know, like, yo, like, what's up? You're into heavy metal and stuff. Da, 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 da. I work this. I showed him my work right there. That I had like a little book with my work. And we're like, well, I'm a biology student in the University of Panama, and I pack bags here to make a little bit of money. But what do you want? And I went like, I want to hang out with you. I want to photograph you, you know. And then we're like, well, write my number. And then like, wrote his number, but then I call him like. He never answered. Then I will show up back again to the supermarket. Another phone. He will give me another phone. But long story short, it's like I ended up making a contact with another Kuna, like an older Kuna metal guy, that they were from the same community in the city, in a bar, actually in J Street, close to where the borderline que es la Avenida de los Mártires now, where Palo Encebado. No, where the Martínez de Nuevo Enero happened, all those killings because of the flag. And we're like, no, this kid's hangs out there. You want me to tell him something? Like, you want to like talk to him or something? And we're like, yes, please, I will really appreciate that. And then like, he talked to him, and I was like, this other Kuna guy was working in the kitchen with my cousin. That he owns a restaurant, and like went hang out there, had a couple of drinks with my cousin, and he went like, hey, I talked to the albino guy, to Machus, and he went like, really, he's gonna call you around. And I went like, okay, whatever. And then like a couple of weeks, I get this bunch of missed calls, and then who's giving me missed calls? And then I called right away, and then he goes like, hey, Castrellón, like, hola, it's Machus Peña, Kuna, metalero. Let's hang out, let's make pictures. And we're like, wow. I went like, where you want to hang out, man? And then like, I didn't even photograph him the first time. Like, we went to this bar, like local bar in Panama City Center, downtown, and we drank like almost like a case of beer, and we got drunk. And that night we hung out, and then ever since, like, he will come to my studio and hang out. And then I photographed him at this place close to from that bar was, you know, Panama City Center with my assistant. And then after that, he introduced me to a couple other Kuna guys. That is the other guy that is in the photo, that is Ivan, but he's like half Kuna and half Waga. And he had a band with other Waga guys. You know, they sounded horrible. Horrible. But I went to photograph him, and there's like kind of like practice room. Bought a couple of beers, and we hung out, photographed him. And then I went like, I'm gonna take a recorder, an audio recorder, and I recorded them. And sonaban desorejado, out of tune, horrible. They were trying to play black metal, but it was amazing, you know. and the song was called Burguelo. That Burguelo means like death or dying in Cuna. And I went like, I have to make something this also too with a video. And then I photographed a little bit of landscape, and went to Cunayala to shoot a video of this island, and this video still, you know, that is called La Isla del Diablo. And then I recorded from another island, and then I like kind of like I looped it, you know, because of this pristine Caribbean life of pastel color, watercolor colors, you know, and all this darkness and all this resistance of, you know, of these indigenous people that fought for this land, and they got westernized, you know, by white men, you know.
Yeah.
And then thrash metal comes from the US, and then black metal comes from Scandinavia, you know. And that's what I was like juxtaposing, and all this resistance and all this anti-establishment, you know, with this youth. But I was gonna get connected more with Machus, you know, and go more to the islands. And he got run over by a car going back home. And then Ivan called me, like the other Cuna guy, that he had passed. And I don't know, like I was como, me fui como de luto. It was like really sad to me, you know, because I lost a friend, like a new friend, you know.
Yeah.
And then I tried, but the thing is, like, this stuff was happening in the 90s. And then, like, the other thing is, like, I have another photo too, but they're really into music, but they're now into, like, kind of like Paramore or My Chemical Romance, or, you know, like emo music, you know. And then emo music is not that much about resistance and anti-establishment. So I kind of stopped. It's a work in progress. I don't know if I'm going to finish it. Because the thing is, like, you go to the community and you show up there with a camera, you know, and then as a white guy, you know, like,
Mm-hmm.
you're not going to go, like, you're not going to blend in right away, you know.
That's the reason that you shot this from the
Sorry?
that's something that you shot this from, well, the landscape from the other side, right? Or
Yeah, because I had a permit in that island.
yeah, but
Well,
not
then not from the other island. Like, you show up with a camera there, and like a chief comes up and says, like, what are you doing?
yeah.
Do you pay for this? You know, like, and then it is their land, you know, like it's not, and you can't do whatever you want, you know.
And
But that's what Kuna Metal is, and I don't know when I'm gonna try to finish it, but I guess it is in progress, you know. But I try to, for the 8th Central American Biennale, like in 2013, I think so. It was, yeah, that it was based in Panama that year, and they gave me some stipend to go try to photograph and research more. And I went to this island really close to Colombia, and with my assistant, and like for 4 days, and found these 2 other kids with tattoos and with mohawks, and I had a permit, and this island called Ugustupu, and then they're rival islands. It's one island, but they're rivals. And then I had permit from one side of the island. But the kids were from the other side of the island that I wanted to photograph. And then I was trying to talk to the chairman chief of the other side of the island, and he never gave me that permit. Like, he was like blowing me off, you know.
yeah,
So I played a geopolitical strategy, because they even have like ¿cómo se dice? Mojón terrestre en inglés, como que these boundary lines made of PVC.
yeah.
So I photographed them like in the other side of the island. And I started photographing them there, really quick, really nervous, with the ocean as a landscape, the Caribbean Ocean as a landscape. And the assistants of the chief like came in and they started grabbing me. And I told my assistant, like, pack everything and go back to the hut where we're staying at. And then I will deal with this. And everybody of that side of the island knew me and they kind of like protected me and they wanted to take my camera away. And I caught off from them and I told them, like, don't, like, I'm not doing anything illegal. I tried to get a meeting, but I got blown off. And they were saying that I was doing photos in near to a secret place, and it was BS. It was next to the health center of that island, you know. And then like I got those shots, but they were kind of like, they're not.
That's or
yeah, it's really a wreck. And then that night we were sleeping in that hut, and then those two kids came and showed up in the middle of the night, telling us like you got us in trouble, and all this stuff. And I went, I didn't get you in trouble. Like I told you, I was gonna give you a print because I gave them Polaroid prints, the proofs. And then they were talking about it like, no, like we're like, no, you're lying to me. Like you're gonna get me in trouble, you know. And then I stopped, and then the next day I took a flight where we had to go back to Panama City, you know. Then, so that's the way. Like, it's possible to do it, but the thing is, like, it's really, really sketchy. Not sketchy. It's their land, and it's really delicate.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what Cuna Metal is.
And can you tell us more about this other project that it's like kind of a research, more long project?
Well, this is a palindrome.
Mm-hmm.
That is a man, a plan, a canal, Panama, and you can say it backwards, you know, like Anna or Hannah. And then this is the #1 palindrome in the U.S. And this is in reference to Teddy Roosevelt when he intervened Panama. And then I was like, wow. Then hanging out with people in this canal zone, like they knew I found out about this. But then when I came here to the U.S. to study here, because of my accent and being Latino and stuff, they was like, hey, where were you back again? Are you Puerto Rican or Mexican? And we're like, no, man. Like, I'm Panamanian, you know? Where the Panama Canal is, you know? And then they will bust up this palindrome, you know? Man, a plan, a canal, Panama, you know? Yeah, we made that, you know? And we're like, wow. That's pretty imperialistic, you know, like kind of like saying, you know? And then I was like, I want to do something with this, you know? So it kind of like struck in my mind. And then living here in the US, studying here in the US, if they wouldn't tell me if I was Puerto Rican or Mexican because of my accent or my heritage, I don't know, whatever they thought. They was like, no, you're from Panama City. Like, you're from the Redneck Riviera, right? And we're like, what? And we're like, no, Florida's Panhandle, you know? And then we're like, wow, there's a place called Panama City, just where I'm from and I was born, you know? And I started investigating, reading, and talking to this professor, like from the University of Alabama, that he actually like owns a cottage like in that coast, and Mexico Beach to be exact, that I got nuked by Hurricane Michael in 2018. And when I went there to do kind of like one trip to see what's up with that place. I was living still in Panama. So no intentions like to just to photograph a little bit to see what's up and talk to people. Why was named just like where I'm from, you know? And then I went there and I went to the public library and I found out all this text, all these ads. So it was this man, this real estate mogul. Yeah, those are the texts. and the ads, and he owned a tabloid called the Panama City Pilot, and it was founded in 1909, like no, 5 years, no, yeah, no, 6 years after the U.S. had intervened Panama to make the Panama Canal, and the U.S. was doing the canal. So we were on everybody's mouth, you know, worldwide, you know, global, you know, that it was going to be the funnel of commerce, you know, instead of going all the way to Tierra del Fuego and Cape of Horn and all the way around, you know. And so this guy, this real estate mogul, this kind of like latifundista, you know, like crazy guy, there was nothing of, well, Florida is just swamp, it's subtropical, has the same vegetation almost as, because it's subtropical, like Panama. So that was one thing, you know, I had in my mind. And it's a swamp. Panama also too is a swamp. That's why I call it Panama too. I call it El Pantano. And, but I didn't know about this tabloid. And when I went on the first trip, I went to the Bay County Library, that is the county of that, where that city is. And I started reading all this stuff. And we're like, wow, this is bigger than this, you know? So at the same time, like this guy got an idea from Teddy Roosevelt, you know, and he changed the name of this city in the US. That is a really common thing in the US, you know? I don't know why, like how, like Vin Vendors, you know, like with Paris, Texas, I don't know what's the thing, why they changed it, they had the name of Paris, Texas, you know, or Athens, Georgia, or whatever, you know, but there was the case because it's where I'm from, you know? And then he created all this fictitious, like there was going to be a connection from Panama City, Florida, a maritime way, like from the Gulf Coast, no, actually from the Rust Belt of America, of the United States, from Chicago, in a train all the way to Bay County, and then connect and to go to Panama. And it was created by this man called George Mortimer West. And then that never happened. That never ever happened. All the steel for building the Panama Canal came from Gary, Indiana. Well, part of the Rust Belt, but not through George Mortimer West's idea. So esta falacia and all this mentira.
Imaginary place.
Imaginary place that I consider also to where I come from is an imaginary place too, you know? Made by this man, you know? So it was this other man with a plan, you know? So it goes all around there, and then I photographed there, and I went like 4 times. And the project is called Palindrome because it's the idea of these 2 men, you know? And but then in this pandemic, like I went crazy reading even more about Teddy Roosevelt. So it's gonna be a chapter of a big project that I'm doing, you know, or researching things related, kind of like a big survey of research and exploration of everything interconnected about Teddy Roosevelt, you know? So how Teddy Roosevelt inspired this man from Florida to do this, you know, this fictional place. And then how Teddy Roosevelt made himself out west too, in the times of the frontier land in North Dakota. And also from there, he created the Rough Riders, you know, and to go and intervene Cuba, because they were trying to get independent from Spain. And he hired all these people. He convocó toda esta gente de Buffalo Soldiers, that they were like black men emancipated from slavery, that they were working out west. Outlaws, Native Americans, and even jocks, athletes, like from Ivy Leagues, from Harvard and Princeton and Yale. And he made that kind of like a squadron, cavalry, and went to Cuba. Well, strategically before that, the excuse of the U.S., like how they always do, is like they blew up the U.S. main outside the coast of Havana. Mysteriously, it blew up because But the thing is, like, it was too full of coal, you know, and it blew up the engines. But that was the reason to go in by Daiquiri Beach and get into that war, and that was actually the first intervention. So it goes all the way around all the stories. I'm making like 3 chapters and then 1 story. So that's what I'm working on, and that's one like my latest process and my latest investigation. What I'm doing, because I'm
But
still obsessed with this guy.
yeah, working with this for like how many, like 5 years, 6 years?
Yeah, 5 years. And then the thing is, like, the ideas came out too, also too, of doing this stuff in Florida too, because I came to New York to live, you know, because before it was like shit. Like, I live in Panama, you know, like, and then flying south in the U.S. is from Panama is mega expensive, you know, and like, so I tried it once, you know, but then my first travel to Florida was in 2017, but I went that there was a bigger story there, you know, so then I ended up getting an artist visa with my wife and coming to New York, and I'm here in New York, and then it's easier and more accessible, you know, like to move around the U.S., you know, and work through my statement and my points of departures now in the U.S. attached what I work on with my narrative, you know.
Yeah.
And that's what I've been doing.
And do you imagine this work as an exhibition or as a book? Because I think that this is very much some.
I wanna do a book. I wanna do a book of like 3 chapters, and probably like 4 chapters. I don't know, because probably that Palen Cebao fits in. I think so. You know, so it can be 4 chapters. You know, including that it's small, and some of them is going to be bigger and thicker or thinner. You know, but definitely an exhibition too as well. You know.
And do you think that this also connected to other countries with this?
Well, other countries where?
I don't know, like with the.
No, what do you mean? You cut off. Sorry.
No, that if you wanna, like, for example, you could connect it to Puerto Rico as well.
I know, yes, totally. You know, I'm obsessed about U.S. interventions. You know, that's my main thing. You know, my country got intervened by the U.S. is the most, la que más han intervenido en toda la historia de los Estados Unidos de América, o sea, 9 times. And the last time was in George Bush in 1989 that Panama got nuked because they put a dictator on, you know, like Pineapple Face, you know, Manuel Antonio Noriega. And he went crazy, and he was doing crazy stuff with the cartels and with the CIA, and he was spooked for the CIA too. You know, and then, well, dictators got trained too inside of the Canal Zone too, in Fort Sherman. They got trained there. You know, Trujillo got, from the Dominican Republic got trained there. Videla and all his spooks got trained there too. You know, Pinochet's spooks got trained too there as well. You know, Escuela Las Americas. You know, it was a branch of School of Americas from Georgia, in Fort Bennington, Georgia. They had the tropical version of that school inside of the military canal zone in Panama. You know, well, all the young U.S. kids before going to MAMM, they got all trained in Fort Sherman too. That Nixon got them out there, and everybody freaking died. You know.
There you go. You have the connection there.
Sí. Hay muchas cosas. There's a lot of things, and you know, and that I think that I need to say, you know, and then especially here in the United States, like, people think Teddy Roosevelt, he was like an amazing man, and he was not. He was called the trust buster, but he was not. He's the one, like, who started all this policy, the foreign policy of the big stick of intervening other foreign countries, you know, for banana or for land, you know, well, canal, you know, like all Central America was there, Guatemala, Salvador, and everything, you know, in times of Ubico too, you know. So there's United Fruit Company too, you know, with bananas. But I don't know if I want to go bananas with bananas though. So
Yeah. Let me go back. Uh, you have still images of some objects. Are those found in the same area that you're researching, or are these?
yeah, I bought that bust of Teddy Roosevelt in Panama City, like in an antique store. In an antique store, and I saw it, and I went like, "Whoa!" And I have to photograph it. But you go back, that like that's the opening image of that project. That it's like that Greco-Roman sculpture, from ancient Greek times, you know, and that's suppression, that's intervention, you know, of white men, the U.S. in this case, you know, and then in front of this, where was the print house where they used to print the tabloid, there was this kind of like little sculpture stuff, like, so you can buy them and paint them, and then across the street, because I go in anywhere and start talking to people and asking questions, you know, like question box, you know, and I bump into that, you know. But Old Colony, this is a single piece, and the first time I went to Puerto Rico, this is like really linked to Puerto Rico, porque
I saw this I think I saw this at Kilometer. I'm not sure.
no, that was like the first time I showed this. It was in Mecca in 2019.
Okay, but it was in Puerto Rico.
Well, it was in Puerto Rico, yeah, and one time I showed it because like I always talk to Carlos about when we were making art, and all the time, like, you know, changing ideas and stuff, and I was like, "Yo, I found this and I photographed this, and this is a piece," and he was like, "Oh my God, man!" But the story goes like that. The first time ever I went to Puerto Rico, I went to Loiza, to La Comay, and then I was just hanging out there drinking medalla and stuff, and like I was with my nephew, Gonzalito, and like. And he comes like, we were on the beach, and I was gonna go back to get some pioneros and stuff, you know, to the kiosco, and then I tell him like, "Hey, what do you want?" Like, "No, tráeme una uvita." Jique, what the hell is that, man? Just say that. And we're like, "Okay." So you go, and I order my stuff, and I went like, "Can I have an uvita?" And then they give me this can. And it says Old Colony. And I went, are you freaking kidding me? And I started like taking pictures with a cell phone. Like, this is crazy. And well, the oldest colony in the world is Puerto Rico. And yeah, and then like, wow, this is crazy. So these people was crazy. Who did this? You know? I started laughing, and then like, and I took one to Panama. I have it in Panama. I had it in my studio. But then the years went by, and then I was mounting a show when I was like directing that contemporary art space I had in Panama with my buddy Van Blasen and Antithesis underneath my studio in Panama City, and we were hanging a show, and then I went to pick up some materials to mount the show, kind of like in the countryside, and like kind of like away from the city, like 30 minutes away from the city. And I bump into this bottle. So this soda pop was bottle 2 in Panama back in the day. So not in my times. And I went like, what the hell? You know, by the US. It was a joint venture of a Panamanian company with an American company. And I went like, this is impossible. So I went like, and I photographed it because we were an Old Colony too, you know?
That's but yeah, so much, Jose. It was a pleasure to be in conversation.
Gracias. Gracias a todos los que se conectaron también.
Instagram nos va a cortar ya en unos minutos or in seconds, but thank you so much to everyone who joined.
A ti. Muchas gracias.
Un abrazo.
Chao, que también nos vemos pronto. Chao.
Bye.